Soundelux Audio Publishing is pleased to present Edgar Cayce, My Life as a Seer, The Lost Memoirs. This is Robert Reedy. Prologue. The psychic gift of Edgar Cayce has been carefully documented by others. He has been the subject of more literature than anyone in his field, some 300 books dealing with various topics covered in his thousands of trance readings. This, his autobiography, is most unconventional. It is in his own words. Much of it he dictated, some is from his lectures. All of it was located in the Foundation archives. At one point he wrote, "Not that I expect to give in chronological order the various experiences and happenings that have impelled me to arrive at this conclusion, but sufficient that you may have a better understanding of why men arrive at certain conclusions." This is his story, as revealed more than half a century after his death. I am often asked, "Are you a spiritualist? Are you a medium?" I am also called a psychic, although I have only tried to be a man of God. I don't know how it works. I just know what has been my experience as a reader for that number of years. During my first few years, I could not see how the things that were said to be done by me or through me while in the psychic state were possible, and after many years of thought on the subject, I do not yet see or know how it is done. How could I, never having studied any of the things known in the cure of human ills, tell what would help someone? I did not know, and do not know even now. My experiences in the work show that the difference is in the intent of those seeking the information. Those looking for material things, sensational things, get them, but the effect is not good for them. The effect upon me is even worse. Only when the desire crept in to make money or to put on the sensational did the work fail. But when asked to try to assist those in real need, I could not in good conscience say no. I learned about God from my mother and father, and from the book, long before I learned about the phenomena. In my youth I was told that I was different. This is a story of my personal experiences with the phenomena. I was born on a farm in South Christian County, Kentucky, Sunday afternoon, March 18th, 1877. My earliest remembrance is of accompanying my mother to church. Among my earliest recollections are conversations with my grandfather, Thomas Jefferson Cayce, who was a most wonderful man. I saw him move tables and other articles, apparently without any contact with the objects themselves. On such occasions he would say, "I don't know what the power is, but don't fool with it." My grandfather drowned in a pond. I had been riding behind him on his horse when he first entered the pond. He returned to the shore to let me off before entering the pond again. I was only 4 when my grandfather was drowned, and I often wonder just what effect this had upon my mental being or my activities in this life. As a child, I loved to be alone, and quite often had playmates that others claimed did not exist. When I was about 9, my aunt asked me to help gather some greens for dinner. As we went by the barn where many unusual things had happened to me, I began to tell my aunt about them. "I see Grandpa there every day when I go there to play, and there are a lot of little boys and girls that come there to play with me." "Eddie, you shouldn't let your imagination run away with you like that. Don't you know it is wicked to tell stories?" "I play with the children, and I see Grandpa, and he talks to me." "I see it, and it is great fun for me. Why is that wicked?" "If you saw them, it would be all right," said my aunt. "But they are not there. Your grandfather has been dead for 6 years now, so to say that you do see them is wicked. I will have to speak to your mother about that." "But Mother sees the children too," I said. "I don't believe it. You are just a bad boy who likes to imagine things." "You are certainly a strange child," said my aunt. "I will have a talk with your mother." "Carrie," she said that evening, "what is this Eddie says about you seeing children playing with him in the barn? You'd better take that child to the doctor. I think he is just out of his mind." "But, Lou, I have seen the children Eddie speaks of." "Whose children are they?" "I do not know. They seem very nice, and I think Eddie is having an experience like we read about, but think can never happen to us.
But what about his saying that he sees and talks with his grandpa?
Lou, I do not know what it is. I just wish there was some way he could go to church, study his Bible, and learn what this is all about.
Tommyrot, said Aunt Lou. You don't mean to tell me you think this foolishness is of God. It is more like the devil, and certainly no good can come of such a thing.
I was reprimanded by different ones of the family as I grew up. This gradually made me ashamed of these experiences, even though to me they were very real. I was considered rather dull, and this was because of my inability to retain much that was taught me in class. Soon after learning to read, a woodcutter told me the first Bible story that made a lasting impression. He said he was strong as Samson. I wanted to know who Samson was. He told me he was somebody in the Bible. I went to my mother and asked her to tell me about him. This story of Samson seemed to attract me more than anything, and I eagerly sought to learn something about this book, which taught about the relationship of individuals to individuals, God's relationship to man, and man's relationship to God. Quite early in life, I became a student of the Scriptures, and love them yet. It seems to me the Scriptures tell us about every phase of psychic power. When anyone begins to make their work or any phase of their work take the place of the Holy Word, then and there they begin to go wrong. When I was about 10 years old, my mother asked if I would like to go to Sunday school. The lesson was the first chapter of Genesis, the creation, and I found it very interesting. In fact, all absorbing. I asked my father to procure a book for me that had the whole story in it. A few weeks later, a Bible was given to me. I began to read, and the more I read, the more certain I became that these things in the barn were real and not foolish. Yet the more others questioned me, the more of a recluse I became. By the time I was 14, I had read the Bible through several times. Understanding little, yet to my developing mind, this book seemed to contain that something that my inner self craved. It was during such a period that one evening I had my first vision. I had been reading of the vision of Manoah, for I loved the story of Samson. Kneeling by my bed that night, I prayed again that God would show me that he loved me, that he would give me the ability to do something for my fellow man which would show to them his love. I was not yet asleep when the vision first began, but I felt as if I were being lifted up. A glorious light, as of the rising morning sun, seemed to fill the whole room, and a figure appeared at the foot of my bed. I was sure it was my mother. I climbed out of bed and went to my mother's room. No, she hadn't called. Almost immediately after I returned to my couch, the figure came again. Then it seemed all gloriously bright, an angel. Gently, patiently, it said, "Thy prayers are heard. You will have your wish. Remain faithful. Be true to yourself. Help the sick, the afflicted." There was little sleep for me after the vision gradually faded away. I could only rush out in the moonlight. I thanked God for letting me know he cared. In school that day I seemed to be still in a daze, and of course missed every word that I was given to spell. My father was waiting for me, and in not too good a humor for my being the dunce in school. "You will certainly know that lesson before you go to bed this night," he remarked. I studied, or thought I did, and was very sure I knew the lesson well, but when I handed him the book my mind became a perfect blank. I had forgotten everything. Around 11 o'clock I began to fall asleep. Finally I suggested, "If you will let me sleep 5 minutes, I can learn this lesson." For something had spoken within, "Rely on the promise." My father told me to go to sleep. When the 5 minutes were up, I handed him the book, for I knew that I knew the lesson. Not only was I able to spell all the words in the lesson, but any word in that particular book. Not only spell them, but tell on what page and what line each word could be found, and how it was marked.